Back in 2017, Titan Comics debuted their version of Fighting American, the Captain America satire created by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby, the same guys who created Captain America. When Titan announced their reboot, they took shots at Marvel's Secret Empire, which had polarized many comic book fans. Titan basically said, if you want a Captain America who isn't a Nazi, actually fights bad guys and stands for American values, come read Fighting American. Boy, were they right. Those first 4 issues were a fun throwback to Golden Age superheroes with a bit of a modern twist. The modern twist being Fighting American and his sidekick Speed Boy being brought from the 1950s to current year, and hilarity ensued. I reviewed those books, which you can find in the link above or in the description. Now, Titan did a follow-up series last year called Fighting American: The Ties That Bind, and they somehow made lightning strike twice, and stronger, because this book is the titties. Yes, I've been listening to lots of Razor Fist lately. It picks up where the previous series left off. Fighting American and Speed Boy are still in current year trying to round up all the tech and villains that Madame Chaos brought to the future. All the tech was created by Professor Dial Twister, Chaos's jerk-faced scientist uncle. So Fighting American and Speed Boy can't go back to the past until they get all the tech and the villains. Along the way, they've been settled into FBI agent Rutherford, who can't believe what she's seeing. That's because FA and SB talk like walking caricatures of people from the 1950s, complete with gosh and jeepers. The story has that tongue-in-cheek tone. There are serious parts to it, but it never takes itself too seriously, which keeps it pretty fun. Even when it does get serious, it's still got a bit of a wink and a nod to it, kind of like the humor in the Orville TV show. Before I get into the story though, let's talk about the art. We've got a new artist on this series, Andy Tong, and Tong just kills it. I think this art is better than the previous art. It's got a lot of personality and expression to it that I think fits the tone of the story much better, even though the previous artist was perfectly fine. Andy Tong has better control though, so you're going to get a more cohesive look. Tong nails dynamic posing and expressions. It's like he's catching the action right on the key moments, giving it this great sense of movement and motion. Very rarely is there a boring panel, let alone a boring page. Part of the charm of the series is its golden age tone, so the art is deliberately simple, and the same goes with the coloring. It's meant to mimic the 4-color process back then. That can be a double-edged sword for artists though, because if your art isn't interesting enough on its own, it doesn't have the colors to help support it. Luckily, Tong doesn't have that problem. The art works perfectly in black and white, so dropping in some simple black colors on top doesn't hurt it at all. The Golden Age throwback concept also allows Tong to kinda skip on the backgrounds. They're not terrible. When they need to look good, they do, but when they don't, just the basics are there. Just enough for you to know where people are. Oddly enough though, there aren't many empty panels. If there's a person in a panel, there's probably a background. A fairly well-drawn background. The character designs are also a joy. You can tell Tong is having fun drawing these faces and expressions. It's the kind of enjoyable art that makes you want to keep reading just to see what happens next. That's what the art is supposed to be. It's supposed to pull you in and make you want more, and Andy Tong's work does that. As for the story, Gordon Rennie is back as a writer, and like I said before, the story picks up where it left off with Fighting American and Speed Boy trying to collect the other texts scattered in current year. What's really cool about the intro is that Rennie catches you up through the characters' dialogue, explaining how these guys got to the present day and showing how out of the loop they are by having them use outdated slang and missing cultural references, like not knowing what the Night of the Living Dead is. So as they're fighting through this group of zombies, you get little gems like this. When Rutherford asks if they've seen the FBI agents, Speed Boy says, "Then yeah, we see 'em." And Fighting American's like, "Yeah? Poor show, Speed Boy. What have we agreed about slovenly contractions of words and use of poor taste 21st century words and expressions? I won't have you carrying these bad habits with us when we get back to good old 1954. Right there we get everything we need to know about how these characters think and act in just a couple of pages. Awesome. So then we meet the guy behind the zombie attacks who calls himself Captain Zombie Master and rants in Twitter speak. He's like, "Totally pwned this whole town. Guess who's got all the lows happening now?" And Speed Boy's like, "That must be that crazy ass whack job there." And Fighting American is not pleased about that. They get to fighting the guy and then he shoots at them and Speed Boy says, "Golly gee sir, if only they'd given you some kind of special shield, then you could use it to block these rays, maybe even deflect them back at that creep." And Fighting American throws some shade instead of a shield. "No need for special shields or any other kind of fancy stuff like that, Speed Boy. A real Fighting American needs to keep both fists free." And he just takes this guy out. Of course, it's never going to be that easy, and the villain uses a transformo pill to turn into a monster. And as this fight happens, Agent Rutherford lists off the ridiculous names Professor Twister gave his inventions. I don't want to spoil them for you, but they're exactly the kind of ridiculous names you find in old comics, especially if they were written by the late Stan Lee. Come on, be honest, he could lay it on a little thick. So when the battle wraps up, Rutherford mentions that their legal department has a little problem with Speed Boy, who's clearly a teenager, being in danger. She wants to find out who his legal guardian is, even though by now that person would either be too old or too dead to care for him. She just needs a little info. And she says, let's start with the easy ones. What's Speed Boy's real name? And he doesn't know. He doesn't fucking know. And Speed Boy's like, wait, you don't even know my name? And he's crying. Look, he's crying. And Rutherford's like, yeah, you don't know his name? And Fighting American's like, it never came up. He just fought and stuff. And he tries to change the subject. And Speed Boy ain't having. He's like, dude, say my name. If you ain't acting shady, say my name. And Fighting American's like, does it begin with a J? It's just awesome. He legit doesn't know his name. And nobody does, because Simon and Kirby never gave him a real name. So he really doesn't have a real name. It's just genius. I love it. I love the wonderful play on Simon and Kirby just not caring enough to name the boy. So Speed Boy storms off, and these new FBI agents, Carver and Cruikshank, show up and take over the Fighting American case from Rutherford. And it turns out that they're not really agents, but assassins working for the director of the FBI, Doubleheader, one of the villains Madame Chaos left in the future. That's an awesome reveal, and they just completely screw with Fighting American for the rest of the story, sending him on pointless missions trying to kill him, but finding out that his strength and 1950s naivete basically makes him death-proof. Ah, but the plot thickens. At the end of the first issue, we find out that Fighting American has a secret. His older brother, whose body he's in, I'll get to that in a minute, had an affair, and that lady had a kid, who also had a kid, who's a total white supremacist. Now, I know there are Trump supporters out there who are going to be pissy about the reveal, but Gordon Rennie takes shots at everyone in both these series, and it's all played tongue-in-cheek. Nothing's taken too seriously, so try not to get your MAGA hats in a bunch. People can make fun of you too. So Chester Crunkle and his son Chad are the only known relatives of Fighting American, and Chester basically wants to bank off his family connection. Meanwhile, his son Chad, who goes by the name The Docs Knight online, couldn't be less interested. The agents keep Fighting American busy fighting pointless battles that don't kill him, and then we get caught up on the whole Fighting American origin. So this is a convoluted mess that had to be intentional on Simon and Kirby's part. Fighting American is actually Johnny Flagg, a war hero. When Johnny is killed, his younger brother Nelson agrees to go through a government experiment that puts his mind in his brother's now enhanced body, making Nelson the Fighting American. Nelson idolized his brother, who he thinks did no wrong, so finding out that his brother had a baby out of wedlock would ruin his image, which is what Doubleheader plans to do to take down Fighting American. It's so silly, but fits the absurd ideas you'd see in Golden Age comics, so it actually works. Rutherford gets placed on basement duty with these two agents who may or may not be older versions of Carver and Cruikshank, who are watching her just in case she finds out too much. Fighting American sulks, missing Speed Boy. He even sets up a second meal for the boy. It's just sad. Meanwhile, Speed Boy is living out his ironically immature fantasies in the only video game arcade in the country. He's like 15 or 16, but his mentality is like that of a 12-year-old. Just awesome. Then in comes Black Carmen Sandiego, a woman named Poison Penny who works for Fox News, spelled F-A-U-X. So you know she's up to no good, especially with that press label in her hat. Only villains wear that shit. The FBI agents keep Fighting American busy with this fake story about a guy attacking Boy Scouts with nukes, and FA is just literally batting them away while the dude pitches crappy villain names at him. He never realizes it's a ruse. He just goes along with it until he's sure the Boy Scouts are at a safe distance, and then he takes the dude out. And he asks for the day off, but Agent Cruikshank's got something to show him. Poison Penny's expose with Speed Boy. She tries to get him to admit he was exploited, but he's so innocent and naive that he doesn't get what she's doing. So she drugs him during the break, and he totally gives her everything she needs. Speed Boy makes the media rounds, and the FBI agents keep Fighting American fighting. Meanwhile, Agent Rutherford stumbles onto the truth about who's running the FBI. And as this goes down, Fighting American appears on Poison Penny's show, which I'm surprised anyone would do. Her name is Poison Penny. you have to know this isn't going to go well. And it doesn't. She brings out Chester and Chad, revealing that Nelson's brother Johnny was a hoe and a deadbeat dad. This actually works on the incredibly naive Fighting American until Agent Rutherford shows up and reveals the truth. Fighting American and Speed Boy make up just like that. And when Fighting American stumbles because he doesn't know Speed Boy's real name, Speed Boy's like, "It doesn't matter, sir. I'm good with Speed Boy. I don't even like my real name anyway." So we still never get his name. It's just awesome. You've got a name. Do I? Do I? So Penny is disgusted, and she thinks she's John Wick and is going to take somebody out with a pen, and gets shot out the window by accident. My favorite part is that nobody is bothered by this. They're just watching like, oh, she's still falling. The story wraps up with them going to get Doubleheader, and I won't give it all away. There is a really nice part at the end that suggests that this general might use Chad as a new subject to create a new Fighting American. That's because this little setup only works with the Flag family's DNA. That's a really nice setup for the next story, which now makes that little jab at the alt-right Nazi thing with Chad make sense. Gordon Rennie might actually make a flat-out satire, if not parody, of Secret Empire in the next series, using Chad as a replacement for Nelson by swapping them in Johnny's body. That seems to be where this is going, and if it is, I cannot wait, because that's going to be awesome. You've got to pick up the series. It's so fun. Both series are in trade right now, so you can get them both and enjoy. If you read The Ties That Bind, let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for listening.